Hey everyone, and welcome to the next episode of Zach's podcast. Thank you all for tuning in this week. First of all, I want to apologize to all my viewers, all my listeners who keep up with the content. I have been getting requests or getting messages asking why I haven't been uploading. So the breakdown is I was actually away on work for like the past 5 weeks. Now I have been back in Sydney for the past 2 weeks now. I've been a little bit lazy trying to get back into routine and trying to get everything back in order. And it's just been an absolute grind to try and do it. But I'm pushing myself. I'm recording today, as you probably saw on my Instagram story. I'm recording and I'm going to upload this. I don't know tomorrow's the 3rd. So it's going to be, hang on, let's take a look at the date real quick. The date that it's going to be dropping is the 13th. So today is the 6th. We'll be dropping this on the 13th. And I thought I would create an episode as to why it's taken me so long and talk to you about my work trip, which I was gone for about 5 weeks. It was technically 3 weeks. I came back for a weekend in Sydney to see my wife and just, have a bit of a break from work because we were pretty much working every single day, 7 days a week. So, we were working pretty much 3 weeks straight. We did, I think, have maybe like a short few days where we weren't working like a full 10, 11 hour day. We had like maybe I think a 4 or 5 hour day, a couple in between, which was nice and refreshing. It felt like we actually had a day to kind of relax and chill out for a bit. But I had some thoughts and I thought, because I pretty much traveled all around New South Wales and I traveled actually into South Australia for part of this particular job. So I thought I would kind of break down where I traveled to, what I experienced in those towns, and just kind of my overall thoughts about country New South Wales, maybe even country South Australia, and just go from there. Because I thought it was quite interesting. There were different little things, I think, in South Australia that they have in New South Wales. And then also talking about the country New South Wales, which, is an interesting story right there. Definitely interesting experience that I had. So I'll just kind of break down the places that I went to first. So I started in Leeton. We were there for 5 days. I arrived there Sunday and we started work Monday. Then Friday morning, we drove from Leeton to Adelaide. So that was a 10-hour drive. From Sydney to Leeton is about 6 hours. Then from Leeton to Adelaide is about a 10-hour drive. Then from Adelaide, we went up to Gladstone / Jamestown. And we were there for about 5 days-ish. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but we were there roughly. Adelaide, we were there for the weekend. Then from Gladstone, Jamestown, we then took off to Broken Hill. Again, we were there for another 5 days or so. I can't remember the exact time. Then from Broken Hill, we drove to Cobar. Now, Cobar, I was only there for about 1 or 2 days. And then I came back to Sydney for the weekend just to see my wife and then come back. And then went back to Cobar, was there for one night. Then from Cobar, went to Mount Hope. From Mount Hope, we then traveled to Condobolin, which was the kind of our central hub for what we were doing. So from Condobolin, we had a few jobs in that town. And then we also went to Fifield. And then from Condobolin, we also went to Kiakatu. And we also went to Uabalong. So in particular, West Uabalong was where we were working. But we did actually go to Uabalong for dinner one night. But those are the places that I went to. And I just wanted to kind of give you guys, my thoughts about what it's like to be kind of on the road and also what it's like to be in the country towns of New South Wales and even South Australia. So let's start off with Leeton. Leeton wasn't really that entertaining, if I'm being particularly honest. But to be fair, we were working quite big days. At least there was some pubs and like places you can go and eat and things of that nature. So Leeton was really nothing entertaining. I think the main part of the trip was when we drove to South Australia, when we actually driving to Adelaide. Just to give you an idea on how much driving I actually did, I'm pretty confident that the amount of Ks that I started with in my car, so my odometer was about 9,500 Ks. And by the end of the trip, when I came back into Sydney for that week, not for the weekend, but for when I haven't gone back since, ended at 16,500 or 16,000 Ks. So I've driven about 6,500 to 7,000 kilometers in those 5 weeks. So it was a lot of driving. The biggest drive was definitely from Leeton to Adelaide. That was a 10-hour drive. But if I'm being quite honest, I actually really did enjoy the drive. Like when we left pretty early, we got some coffee, got a little bit of breakfast, and pretty much hit the road. And I really enjoy driving. I think driving is just an experience. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of like it's like mental health for me, to be honest. It's just my mind, like not only enjoying the scenery, like open grass fields and, windmills and all sorts of different things that you see. Like we saw bulls fight. That was really interesting. I actually got a recording of that. I should have put that on my story. So I saw bulls fight. We saw heaps of different wildlife. We saw a lot of goats actually along the road. I was quite surprised on how many goats I saw. I thought I'd see a lot more kangaroos. Like I've gone out in country and driven like in the country of New South Wales, and we saw a shit ton of kangaroos. But for some reason on this trip, we hardly saw any, which not sure what the reason why that is, but didn't see any kangaroos. But moving on. So honestly, the drive from Leeton to Adelaide truly felt like it was a 10-hour drive, and it felt like 6. It didn't feel that long at all. And as we were driving into Adelaide, we stopped into a few towns, toilet breaks, getting something to eat. And I'll be the first one to admit, I don't know if anyone else has had this experience, but most pubs around around the country of New South Wales and even country, because we had to actually drive through Victoria to get to Adelaide the way we were going. And the way we drove through, we actually, I think, stopped at a pub in Victoria. And I don't know, like the meat quality in country towns is just so much better in those pubs and in the country towns of New South Wales, of Victoria and South Australia. Like they were just spot on, like I think way better than Sydney. Anyway, so when we were driving into South Australia, I remember thinking to myself, as we were driving in, South Australia is just so different to New South Wales. And actually, when we were driving from I'm going to backtrack a little bit further. As we were driving from New South Wales to Victoria, it was fine. But then as soon as we got from Victoria to South Australia, we had to actually go through like I don't even really, it's kind of like, those border places where they kind of just ask us, oh, you guys carrying any organic foods like, fruits and stuff like that? And I didn't have any fruits and things like that, but my friend had some blueberries and some strawberries and stuff, and they actually confiscated it and took it away from us. And I remember thinking, it's all Australian product. Like, why are you taking it away and destroying blueberries that were bought here? Like, it was so strange. I didn't understand. But it was okay to bring like packet foods, like, because I had these like peanut butter bars and just for the road. But it was okay to bring them in, but any, blueberries and strawberries, like for whatever reason, they decided they had to take them away and destroy them, which I thought was very interesting, seeing as though like we're all part of Australia and they had their own sort of like border security sort of thing there, which was interesting. So fast forwarding now, we're driving to, that was my phone going off. I don't know if you guys heard that, but so driving down, now we're in South Australia, we're going towards Adelaide. And I remember as we were driving through Adelaide, it was just so scenic driving through South Australia. Like even the highways that we were driving through, I remember thinking, this is like a scene from The Lord of the Rings. Like there were just tall trees along the highway. It was all bushy. I think it just must have been the whole thing where the way the sun was setting, the way the trees were moving with the wind. Like it just felt like I was in a different world. Like South Australia was a completely different area than Sydney. And then when I came back to Sydney all those weeks later, I just remember thinking Sydney's so much more industrial with the highways. Like South Australia just felt so much nicer and felt clean. Like it was weird. I don't know how to explain it. Like Sydney just felt a bit rough and South Australia just felt a lot nicer. I felt very green. And I was like, wow, it's really, really scenic driving down this highway. It was really cool. Don't remember exactly what the highway was called, but it was really cool. So fast forward, we get to Adelaide, we check into our hotel, and we're there for the weekend. Now, we were actually there for the weekend, not for work. It was just we stayed in Adelaide for the weekend because it made sense for us to stay in Adelaide and then take off to Gladstone. So, and Gladstone was about 3 hours north. So we were going to leave at 7 and get there at 10 and start work for the day when we got to Gladstone. Anyway, my thoughts about Adelaide. Now, for those who don't know, I'm obviously from Sydney. I'm sure you probably figured that out from just this episode. Yeah, two completely different cities, but honestly, I was impressed with Adelaide. It's just such a nice city. I genuinely didn't expect that. And if I'm being completely honest, I felt like I was being treated like an adult when I was in Adelaide. Like, you know, I didn't feel like there was curfews. Like the thing that kind of blew me away was actually our first night when we were in Adelaide. Now, in Sydney on Thursday nights, we have late night shopping, and shops are usually open to about 9 o'clock. For some reason, you know, the restaurants or the shops and all the, you know, food courts and everything like that were open past 9 o'clock. And I'm pretty sure we were there, you know, 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, still out. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember confidently if that was the case, but I just remember everything still being open. And I remember thinking, wow, this is just a breath of fresh air. Just seeing like shops open, like being able to shop late whenever you kind of want. I didn't have to, you know, shops in Sydney kind of close are all around 5:30, especially if you're going to a Westfield. You know, the place that we went and did our shopping was the Rumble Mall, which is the equivalent of Pitt Street Mall here in Sydney. You know, Pitt Street Mall is not as big as Rumble Mall, but, you know, I think there's a lot more exotic stores in Pitt Street Mall. And definitely not as busy. Pitt Street Mall was way busier than Rumble Mall, but still nice in their own way. It was a great experience doing that. We traveled all around, you know, the city of Adelaide. We got those little scooters and scooted around, and you know what? So much fun having those scooters. I don't know why we don't have those higher motor scooters in Sydney. I've heard one of the reasons is because a lot of people started throwing them off the bridge and into the water, and it just ruined the whole experience. Like, you go to Brisbane, they've got them. I don't know if they've got them in Melbourne, but I'm sure they do. They've got them in Adelaide. I'm sure they've got them in Perth, but in Sydney they just won't do it, and it's honestly a shame because it's such a cool way to travel around Sydney. Another thing was, you know, we ended up going to a few bars on the Saturday night in Adelaide, and again, it just felt like I was an adult. You know, I could order any type of drink at any time. Not like here in Sydney where I can't order a shot after 11:30. Like, that's a joke. I feel like I'm treated like as if I'm 17. You know, that's another thing for people who are listening, and especially if anyone's international and they're listening to this and they're questioning whether or not they want to come to Sydney because they've heard the nightlife is amazing. The nightlife is not amazing. It is actually shithouse in Sydney right now. It is terrible. I've been to Brisbane, Melbourne, and Adelaide and can guarantee you that they are way better places to go to if you're looking for nightlife. Sydney is so bad for nightlife right now. Like, there's hardly any bars. Like, there are bars, there are clubs, but very far and few in between now, especially with clubs. Pretty much all of them are closed down now. Apparently, there's a bit of an upshift now to try and get more clubs into the scene, but it's going to be a very, very long time before it gets to where it was in the past. But if anyone's listening and they want to go somewhere else, go to Brisbane, go to Melbourne, go to Adelaide, go to any of those other places. Don't come to Sydney if you're looking for a good quality nightlife. You are going to be very, very disappointed. That's kind of my 2 cents. So yeah, going back to what I was saying on the Saturday night in Adelaide, it was just, again, I was treated like an adult. Bars were open. It was a good time. You know, my friends and I were getting drinks. It was good. It was a good time. We ended up going to the casino. I didn't spend any money. It would have been nice to spend money, but I was trying to save as much as I can. So anyway, long story short, Adelaide was overall a really good time. I really do recommend people going. Coffee was great. Went to a couple of food markets. And surprisingly, there was a lot of stuff on. Like, I don't know if it was that particular weekend that we went, but there was Oktoberfest. There was like 3 or 4 artists that were playing in Adelaide that night, and tickets were reasonable. They were like $60, $70. And we were going, should we just get tickets and just go? Like, fuck it, we're in Adelaide once. Let's just go and have a good time. We didn't end up doing that, so we ended up just going to a couple of bars. But I do recommend Adelaide. I would definitely go back to Adelaide for a long weekend. I would fly on a Friday, stay Saturday, Sunday, and then come back on the Monday for sure. So yeah, then from there we took off to Gladstone, Jamestown. I don't know what it is about that particular town, but I felt like I was getting ripped off every second of the way. Every second of the way there. Like, don't get me wrong, the food was good. Like, I wasn't blown out of the water with the food and stuff in that area or in that town. But the reason why I say is, like, we were paying, in most places when you get steak and chips, you're just paying about $35, especially in pubs. Because that's where we were mainly eating. We were mainly eating around pubs, especially once you start going into country Australia. Because now we're starting to work. Most places you go on, you end up spending anywhere between, $30 to $40. You can go a bit cheaper if you get like a chicken schnitzel, chicken parmesan, a burger. You can get away with just over $20 and get those meals, which was what I was doing some of the nights. But you can only eat them so often, right? You get over the same taste every single night. So, yeah, between $20 and $30, maybe a little bit over $30 for meals. And then this particular area was charging $45 to $50 for the same thing. And it was and every single night, and we were there for 5 nights. Like $50 for dinner is quite expensive. And it wasn't just in Jamestown. It was in the next town that we were going to after Jamestown, which is Broken Hill. Very, very similar prices. Now, in saying that, it's probably because there's nothing else around, so they can get away with charging a little bit more, which is probably the main reason why they did that. And I can understand, but at the same time, it's a bit of a shit. And for those who don't know, and people who drink beer, I'm not a big beer drinker. But for those who drink beer, if you do go to South Australia, they don't have pints. So I think the way they do their cup sizes and stuff, it's a little. Their pint is a schooner or it's something weird, and you don't get as much beer or as much beer in the glass that you might think if you're asking for a pint. I'm pretty sure. Or they don't have pints. It's just a schooner there, and their schooners are different to our schooners. So, yeah, just to keep that in mind for people who are going to South Australia, they do actually have different size cups there. So, yeah, moving on. We were in Jamestown for 5 days, and I'm pretty sure this cafe just got away with highway robbery with me. They just happened to get me at a time where I was hungry, I was thirsty, and I just kind of really wanted the taste for coffee. So I thought, you know what, I'll treat myself. It was a really, really hot day. We were just finishing up. We were about to go and drive to Broken Hill. We're going to go fill up and drive straight to Broken Hill. And I was going to get a bit of a long-winded story. I got a sandwich. I knew it was $16. When I went to go pay, I was like, you know what, I'll get a coffee too. I didn't really look at the price on the menu for coffee. I just assumed $5 to $6. So I thought, it's going to be about $21, for my meal. He told me it was $24.50 for my sandwich plus a small iced latte. And I stopped and I just went, did you just charge me $9.50 for an iced latte, small iced latte? And he goes, yeah, it's because you get oat milk. And I just remember thinking, did you guys just charge me $4 for oat milk? Like, what was the story there? But honestly, I just wasn't in the mood. I just said, whatever, I paid it. And you know what? It was a good coffee. I did enjoy it. I smashed it. But I was very salty at the fact that I just spent $9.50 for an iced latte. That cafe definitely knows who they are. I'm not going to say what the name of the cafe is called because if I'm being completely honest, I don't remember what it was called. But yeah, they got away with highway robbery with that coffee. So from there, we took off to Broken Hill. Now, Broken Hill is actually a much bigger town, and there's actually things to do there. Oh, by the way, just going back to Jamestown, very, very scenic, very beautiful. Like the greenest grass I've ever seen in my life. I'm pretty sure the screensaver that we had in like the 1998 windows with the green fields and the hills, pretty sure that photo was taken there because it was unreal. Some of the views that I saw there. So now we're going to Broken Hill. The drive from Jamestown to Broken Hill was one of the best drives I have ever done. It was beautiful. That drive was 3.5 hours. It felt like an hour. And honestly, I remember thinking and again, it just must have been the whole thing. There was not one cloud in the sky. It was just an amazing experience to just drive down that road. And it's not like it was an entertaining road, like with some zigs and zags. It was just, it felt, there was like a presence when I was driving through just pure country. Like when I say pure country, I probably more than likely meant to say just pure desert, because it's just empty. There's nothing out there. And there's a sign that you pass when you get to a particular area as you're driving through. It says for the next 200 Ks, there is absolutely nothing. It says there's no fuel, there's no shops, there's no nothing from now for the next 200 kilometers. Which, if you're on your own, it's quite nerve-wracking to be driving 200 kilometers on a road on your own. And if something goes wrong, because that's what was going on in the back of my head, if something goes wrong, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like, there's no reception there either. Luckily, I was only with a convoy, so I had 2 other boys with me. So that gave me definitely peace of mind. And I was leading as well. So definitely gave me peace of mind that as we were driving through, if something did happen to go wrong with my car, that the other 2 boys definitely would have seen me and pulled over and we would have sorted that out. But anyway, that drive was amazing. And I said to one of pretty much at this point, I'll say a co-host at this point, Shannon, I told him if we ever got Porsches and we ever had like a GT2, a GT3 RS, and we drove from Jamestown to Broken Hill in that exact time, like we would have to leave at 3:30 and drive to Broken Hill. It was just an amazing drive. It was unreal. I would definitely do that again. I would love to just hire cars and just do that drive with a Porsche, because it was amazing. It was beautiful. I loved it. Got to Broken Hill, a much bigger town, obviously. At least they had a gym there, which was nice. Got a bit of a workout done. But again, there's really, other than maybe a gym, and there's a bigger town, so there's more cafes, more places to eat. They had a Subway, so it was nice. They had a couple places that we could have gone to eat, but yeah, it's not really entertaining. First town to be heritage listed. It did genuinely feel like, as we drove through, it felt like I was driving through a Western back in the 1800s. It truly did feel like that. I was like, it had the full banner and like the buildings felt really old. And I thought, wow, I felt like I was a cowboy. But yeah, so again, we didn't really do much in the town. We didn't really go exploring. We just kind of did our work. I'm not going to say we did go exploring, because we didn't. We just went to the town, went to the gym, found a couple of pubs, ate there, and then just chilled out for most nights. We didn't really go adventuring. It was definitely more of a town that had Kmart's and Woolworths and all sorts of different things there. So it wasn't, would I go back there again to Broken Hill? I don't think I would. I'm glad that I got to experience it. I probably wouldn't go back, if I'm being particularly honest. Would I go back to Jamestown? As much as I would hate to say no, so I would love to say no, I kind of am going to say yes, just because it was a great town. And I just want to do that drive. I would just want to do that drive from Jamestown to Broken Hill at that specific time with the specific sun and everything. Like, if I could redo that drive, it was amazing. I can't stress that enough. So from Broken Hill, we went to Cobar. We were there for 1 or 2 days. And then that weekend, I ended up coming back to Sydney and then coming back to Cobar. That's an 8.5 hour drive from Cobar to Sydney. And then pretty much another 8.5 hours back from Sydney to Cobar. So I did 17 hours just there. That was a bit brutal, I'm not going to lie. But I was happy to be back for that weekend and see my wife. It was great. I just needed that. I needed that rest as well, like being on the road for 3 weeks and just eating the same crap. It was good. It was good to be back. Came back to Cobar. Cobar, there's nothing there. Yeah, I think it's purely a mining town. Broken Hill is a mining town as well, but there's literally nothing there. And from there, from Cobar, we went to Mount Hope. That was an entertaining and eventful experience. So one of the jobs that we had to do was in Mount Hope, and we pretty much had no choice where we were staying. we had to stay in this pub. Now, in this pub, there's absolutely zero reception for me because I was Optus. There was no reception. My friend was with Telstra. He had reception. So, and literally the pub was in the middle of nowhere. Nothing around for kilometers. Like for at least the next half an hour, there was nothing around. And it was just so strange to stay in a place where there's absolutely nothing around. The toilets and the showers were outside of the pub. I didn't shower that night because I'm a bit of a germaphobe. So I will genuinely shower if at least it's semi-clean. But if you took one look at there was no chance I don't think anyone would have showered there. I'm probably just being, a bit of a snowflake. But yeah, I wasn't going to shower there. And yeah, stayed the night there. Had one of the best sleeps of my life. And I genuinely think that's because there was no Wi-Fi there. So I didn't really need to look at my phone or do anything. I just kind of put my phone down and go to sleep because I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't do anything. They did have Wi-Fi, but then they turned it off at 10 o'clock. So that was fun. Yeah, very, very boring. The people there were very interesting as well. But yeah, from Mount Hope, we then did a couple of jobs going towards, we were going to Condobolin. So we did 2 jobs in Kiakatu. Stayed in Condobolin. I ended up staying in Condobolin for throughout the weekend and throughout that week and the following week. And Condobolin again didn't really have that much going on. Fifield didn't really have anything. That was even smaller than Condobolin. And what else was there? West Uabalong had nothing there as well. And that's about it. That's kind of like the end of that trip. But I have a question for the people who live in the country. And I don't mean this as a bit of a shot against you guys, but I am genuinely curious about this because I truly don't know what you guys do out there for fun at night. Honestly. Because even on the weekend. Because on the weekend here in Sydney, like if we wanted to go do something, we could go for a bike ride. We can go for a walk, like along the beach. We can go, like just drive to Bondi, drive to Cronulla, like drive to different areas. We can go into town, into the city and, go try different restaurants. We can go to the movies. There's laser tag. There's go-karting. There is bars and clubs. But again, overrated in Sydney now. There are things to do that you can do in Sydney. But in those country towns, like honestly, the only thing I could think of was go to the pub and drink. That's literally all you could do. And I thought, okay, maybe on the weekend you could probably get the quad bikes out, go for a ride, which is what I saw people doing, which looks fun. But I can imagine you'd get over that eventually. Camping I guess is another thing. But other than camping, other than going on quad bikes and stuff, and I guess like for kids, I can imagine every weekend that's what they're doing because that's probably what I'd be doing. But when you're an adult, you're not doing that all the time. But going, other than going to the pub, other than doing those things and also going to the pub and drinking, what else is there to do? Because truly, I feel like I would be so bored. Now, there's probably a lot of you thinking, am I always doing something every single weekend? No, of course not. I'm not doing something every single weekend. But there's options. There's a lot of things that you can do here in Sydney. And that's the thing that I didn't feel like I had when I was in the country. Like I couldn't just go for a walk somewhere. Like I could, but it'd be very, very boring. So I don't know at least like in Sydney, there's beaches and stuff that you can go to. And, there's scenic places. There's actual hikes that you can go to like through national parks and stuff like that. I truly don't know what there is to do in the country. If you're from the country, I actually do want to hear from you. Comment something on the video, comment something, or hit me up on my Instagram or something. Like I am genuinely curious to what you guys do in the country. And like, honestly, would love to hear about it. Let me know. Comment down below. I did kind of want to talk about something, but I thought I might leave it for another episode. I think I will leave it for another episode actually, because it doesn't really make sense with the whole scheme of this episode. But anyway, I think I'm going to start wrapping it up here because, this is my first podcast. I was a little bit nervous actually recording this. I didn't know how I was going to go. This is all done in one take, actually. I didn't really know how I was going to go with this episode. I was a little bit nervous setting up, but it was a good nervous. I felt happy being back in action again. And I'm glad that now I have a deadline that by Monday next week, I'll have this up. So I'm pretty sure today was the 6th. I think it was like the 13th was the date that I was going to have it up. Yeah, the 13th. So on the 13th, this will be live. And again, thank you all for listening to this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a thumbs up on the YouTube video. And if you can, leave a 5-star review on Spotify and iTunes. It really does push the content or my profile a very, very long way. And I also have an Instagram and TikTok, which I do try to post some content there every once in a while, just some snippets of the podcast and maybe a couple of reaction videos here and there to kind of grow the channel. But so without further ado, I'll see you guys next time. See ya.